book lovers, welcome back to the Bibliovert channel. My name is Jacqueline, and for today's video, we are going to do a little reading vlog of the books that are on my fall TBR. I've already started, so I technically have 3 already completed that I am going to talk about. 2 of them I really enjoyed. One of them really didn't, unfortunately, so we'll talk about those, but then we are going to be reading some of the books that are on my TBR, and I cannot wait. So let's just go ahead and dive right into this. So the first one is actually one that we just did on the Bibliovert podcast. If you want to hear a little bit more in depth of my thoughts as well as Allie's, then definitely go check that out. But the book is The Dead Romantics by Allie Poston. This is a romance. Allie and I kind of had a discussion about this on the podcast of whether or not it was a rom-com. And while it was funny and there was fantastic banter, very witty, very punny, wonderful, there wasn't a lot of like comedic moments that happened in the book. So I think we just both say romance. Both of us were also very surprised that this book deals so much with grief in the terms of losing someone as well as like losing a relationship. So there's a lot of processing death as well as lost relationships, and it is quite heavy. However, we both really enjoyed this book. I think we both gave it 4 stars. It was just a fun read. It was quick. It was easy. The premise is fantastic. It is about Florence, who is a ghostwriter for a really popular romance author, and over the last year she has gotten out of a awful relationship, horrible breakup, and she now no longer believes in love. So when she asks her new editor for an extension, he says no. And while she thinks he's really cute, she is kind of up a creek because she doesn't know what to do about finishing this book when she doesn't believe in love anymore. And in the meantime, she finds out that her father has died. Her family owns a funeral home. And while she's there, we find out that she can see ghosts because her new cute editor shows up on the front doorstep of the funeral home as a ghost. So she's dealing with grief with her father's passing and is trying to figure out what to do about her being able to see her new boss as a ghost and trying to finish the manuscript. And it's a lot, but it is so good, and I really enjoyed it. So I highly recommend this one. It's super fun. It's not set in the fall, but I just kind of pretended like it was. And since it talked so much about ghosts and things, it was just fun. So highly recommend you to add this one to your fall TBR. I actually finished this next book last night and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was really enraptured with this book and was thinking about it a lot when I wasn't reading it, and it is Vespertine by Margaret Rogerson. I will say the only complaint that I had about it was in regards to the world building. It wasn't complex, but when it came down to like, this book is about like ghosts and spirits and stuff, when it came down to that, it was a little bit difficult to follow. And so there were aspects of the plot as well as the world building that I was very confused at, and I kept saying like, maybe it'll make sense later, like maybe there'll be a reason for this, and there wasn't. So that was kind of my only reason that I gave it 4 stars instead of 5, but it was really good. This book is about Artemisia, who is studying to become a nun, who basically helps make sure that dead bodies don't get possessed. But when her convent gets attacked, she has to pretty much wield this relic with a spirit to keep the convent from falling. But because it's been so long since someone has wielded this spirit, there's no one to train her on how to use it. And so she is not able to put the spirit back in the relic. So she's not possessed, but there's kind of this duality within her. They share her body. They can talk to each other, and she ends up being trained by the spirit, which is called a revenant. So I've talked about this book a couple of times on our channel before in terms of I want to read it. This is the plot of it. And I realized that with the blurb, when it talked about the revenant, I did not put 2 and 2 together that the revenant was the spirit. I thought the revenant was a book. So I think I've said that multiple times of like, oh, so now she has to go be trained by this book. No, she's being trained by the spirit. So anyway, it was really interesting. The book ended kind of nicely with everything tied up, but it was like it could continue to be a series, which I do think it's going to be, or it could be a standalone, which was kind of nice. I've read Margaret Rogerson's other books, Sorcery of Thorns and Enchantment of Ravens, and both of them are kind of standalones, but I do think this one's going to be a series, which I'm very excited about. I also think it's worth pointing out there is zero romance in this book. There's not a love interest. There's not even an inclination of someone who could be a love interest. There is no expressed interest. There's no talking about attraction. There's none of that. So it is purely world building, plot, things like that, which honestly I kind of enjoyed. It was really, really fun. And I really, really liked the main character Artemisia, and I actually really liked hearing about the Revenant and their thought process as well, which I thought was really fun. So I liked it. 4 out of 5 stars. Definitely fit the mood. Highly recommend adding this one to your TBR as well. Okay, so this next one, I'm like almost nervous to say that I didn't like it because I have not heard a single bad thing about this book yet. Almost everyone that I have seen talk about this book online has like absolutely ate it up and loved it. And y'all, I don't know what it was, but I did not like it. And I'm really, really bummed. And I thought like maybe I'm just in a grouchy mood, and that's what it was, because I did not really like any books I read in September. And I'm just really not sure that's it. So anyway, I am well aware that there are going to be a lot of people who love this book. It just wasn't for me, unfortunately, which is okay. But it is Spells for Forgetting by Adrienne Young. I was very grateful we received an ARC of this book, and which was delightful and wonderful. I also bought the hardcover of it before I had finished the book. This is Adrienne Young's first adult novel, and it is kind of like a mystery, not really a thriller. Definitely a mystery though. Sometimes for me, Adrienne Young's writing can be a hit or a miss. Like I absolutely love Sky in the Deep and Fable, but I did not enjoy Namesake. I have not read a few of her other books as well, but it can kind of be a toss-up for me. It's either I really, really like it or like I really, really don't like it. And unfortunately, this one fell into the don't like it category. Basically, the blurb talks about how this is a really remote island up in like the Pacific Northwest, where all of the women are witches and everything's just like deeply steeped in this lore and mystery. And 10 years ago someone died, and basically the island and no one else has recovered from that moment, which is true. Like all of that stuff is accurate. However, I was expecting a little bit more witchy, and we did not get very much. It's quite frankly very, very minimal. And so I was kind of taken aback by that. And the whole mystery that happened too came together. Like it was very predictable very early on. And then the whole reason for the murder and like the reasoning behind everything that happened after that was not it for me. Like I was scratching my head so many times of like, I don't think that would happen. You know, like, so it just didn't feel very believable or like a good enough reason for me. And some of the decisions that these characters made, I'm like, oh, no. So her writing was beautiful. It was definitely very lyrical, very atmospheric, very emotional. And so I feel like maybe it kind of drug along a little bit. And then when we finally did get to the mystery, I was like, well, yeah, we figured that out pretty early on. And then I was like, but still not a very good reason. So I think overall I was just like really disappointed by the ending of it. And then like we get this like epilogue moment, and it just made me so angry all over again. But if you're looking for just kind of like a really lyrical, easy paced, you know, moody read, then this one's definitely it. And again, I think that most people have absolutely eaten this book up. But unfortunately, I just wasn't one of them. Bummed about it. so grateful we received the ARC. Really excited for Adrienne Young to be moving out of the YA category and into the adult. But unfortunately, this one was just a miss for me. So we're all caught up now. I started this book last night. I'm only like 17 pages into it, and let me tell you, I am not okay. The emotional turmoil that I am in, I am not okay. And it is The Golden Enclaves by Naomi Novik. This is the third book in the Scholomance series, which I absolutely love so much. I started reading this series 2 years ago when A Deadly Education came out, and then I think last year when I did a fall reading vlog, I read The Last Graduate, and so it just feels right to be reading the final installment in this series for this reading vlog. I love this series so much. The character growth that we have seen just in the first 2 books is outrageous. This is basically about a girl named Elle who goes to this magic school. There are no teachers, there are no adults. The school teaches you, except its teaching technique is basically to try and kill you. So very sink or swim, throws you in the deep end. And Elle's affinity in magic is basically that, like, she has mass destructive abilities. She's incredibly powerful, and the school's basically just tried to teach her to, like, use that mass destruction. She's a very, like, prickly anti-hero. She's a loner, but the transformation that we see in her from book 1 to 2 was so good. I was sobbing at the end of book 3 because of, like, the relationships and the people and her sacrifice. It's really, really good. It's very dark academia. It's honestly unlike anything else I've ever read before, but if you are kind of looking for, like, that magic school, this takes it but makes it completely different. I am really honestly torn to be starting to read this book because it means that it's coming to an end. And I'm not okay, but I also have so many questions from the end of book 2 that I need to know ASAP. But yeah, we'll see what we're reading next, but I'm super excited. Hi, so it's been a little while since I've done a reading update. I've read 3 books since the last time I checked in. I believe we left off with me just starting The Golden Enclaves by Naomi Novik. I will come back to this one, but I had to temporarily put it down to read The Kiss Curse by Erin Sterling. Erin Sterling also wrote The Ex-Hex, and they're both standalones, but they're, like, about the same family, but they just follow different family members. So we read The Ex-Hex last year for a book buddy read with our patrons, and we all loved it. I think I gave it like 5 out of 5 stars. It was like one of my favorite reads of the year. I unfortunately did not enjoy this one very much. I had a hard time kind of connecting with the main character. And then the plot was kind of similar to the first one where not a whole lot happened. And I needed a little bit more, and I felt like some of the magic and the whimsy and the, like, fun setting that we got in the first book, we just didn't really get in this one. So I did not rate it as high, but if you would like to know a little bit more of our thoughts, then definitely go check out the podcast episode that we have on this. We definitely go in a lot more depth. Okay, so then now back to The Golden Enclaves by Naomi Novik. This book was good. I liked the ending. I liked the way that it ended. I liked the way that we wrapped it up. I liked how, like, I was content with the way that the series ended, but I didn't like how we got there in this book. So I was talking to some people about this book because they had already read it, and it was Cassie from Shark Bait's Bookshelf and Rebecca from Rebecca Reads Books, and I was just talking about how I felt like there was something missing, and I think it's because the school is so prevalent in the first two books, that it felt like its own character, that it had its own dynamic, that it was so complex, that when this book didn't have it at all, I missed that element that the school was bringing into it. So I think that definitely had a part to play. I didn't really like the plot of the book either. Some things that were happening that I just unfortunately wasn't really interested in or really liking. Also, something that I found really shocking, and it took me quite a while to figure it out, there's practically zero dialogue in this book. I mean, very, very, very minimal dialogue. We are in Elle's head and the way that she processes things, which is amazing. Naomi Novik did a fabulous job writing it, but the way that she processes things, we got to see that play out and experience it with Elle. But I needed more dialogue. And then the dialogue that we did have were with characters that I didn't really love. I found that in a lot of instances, I wanted to skim or skip ahead, or I just wanted the plot to be a little bit different. So I did end up giving it 3 stars. I think it's because I really, really love this series, and I do really, really love the characters. And I was happy with the way that it ended. I thought it was really good, but I definitely will say that it wasn't quite what I was expecting. Maybe a little bit bummed, but I had a lot of fun reading it with those 2 girls, and really, really enjoyed getting to talk to them about the book. So the next one that I read was for our book buddy read, and it is Belladonna by Adeline Grace. And y'all, I really enjoyed this one. I was pleasantly surprised. As of right now, we have not talked about it with our patrons, but this one fit what I was looking for really, really well. This is about a girl who can see death and can see ghosts, but she herself can't die. She's an orphan and she keeps moving from family member to family member, and everyone around her keeps dying. So she has now moved to a new family member's house, but just a few months before she got there, her aunt passed away, and when she arrives, she can see the ghost of her aunt, and the ghost is telling her that she was murdered. So now she has to team up with death to figure out what happened to the aunt and to keep it from happening again. I just loved that premise so much, and I thought it was so interesting. I really liked the character of Death as well. I thought that was a very interesting characterization. It's set on like the moors in this gorgeous Gothic manor house. So it was just a lot of fun to read this book. Again, some things I didn't love, but for the most part, I'm just like not thinking about those things and thinking about the things that I really liked. So I would definitely recommend this book. Adeline Grace has already announced that the sequel Foxglove is going to be coming out next year, and she released the cover and it is absolutely stunning. I love it. So I'll definitely be picking that one up next year too. Okay, so as for the book that I'm reading right now, my fall TBR has gone like whoop and gone way off to the side, but I can technically blame my mom, so I'm going to. She reached out to me a couple weeks ago and was like, Jacqueline, I desperately need a book recommendation. I don't want to have to think too hard. I just want to be swept away. I want it to be fun. I want it to just be enjoyable and just have a good time, and it just like be an easy, fun, delicious read. And I was like, girl, I got you. So I recommended Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. She has read the Caravel series. It has been a couple of years, but she really, really liked it. I think she actually enjoyed it more than I did. She like really, really loved it. So I was like, you gotta read this one. I read this back in January and loved it. I thought it was so much fun. So I was like, you have to read this book. Let me know what you think. I want to hear all about it. So then, not a long time later, she called me and she's like, Jacqueline, have you read Once Upon a Broken Heart? And I was like, yes, I recommended it to you. And she was like, okay, do you have a podcast episode on it? And I was like, no. She goes, I need to talk to you about it. I need to talk to you about it. And I was like, okay, like, let's talk. I'm ready. Like, I remember the book. Let's do it. And she goes, well, did you read like Once Upon a Broken Heart is the second one, right? And I was like, no, that is the Ballad of Never After. And she was like, oh, have you read that one? And I was like, no, I've only read the first one. I think this one like just came out. And she was like, read it right now. So she, bless her heart, had gotten the first one on her Kindle and then bought the second one, and she was like, I didn't even know what it was called. I just like bought book 2 and started reading. She was like, I don't even know where book 1 ended and book 2 starts. So she has been messaging me, and every time we talk on the phone, she's like, have you started it? Have you started it? Have you started it? Have you started it? So I put my TBR on hold because I told my mama that I would read The Ballad of Never After. I am 57 pages into it. Absolutely loving it. Having such a great time. The first one I tabbed and just like had so much fun writing my theories and everything in the margins and just like marking every time it was whimsical and adorable and just fun. And so I decided to do that again, but I decided to do it at like page 50. So I need to go back for the first 50 pages and tab all the times that like all my thoughts and things like that. So apparently I'm reading this one, but I think it'll be a lot of fun. So going to keep going, reading this one, see how it goes, and then I don't even know what I'll read next. This vlog has ended up covering several weeks, and so I'm just going to keep it going. I have taken a little break from posting a YouTube video every single week, and just I've given myself a bit of a break because we have so much going on in the month of October. So this vlog might end up just being a lot of books that, you know, we talk about, and I think that kind of sounds like fun. So I'll check back in with you when I finish, or maybe not, maybe before then. I don't really know, but I'll check back in. But I hope you're enjoying reading whatever you're reading, and I'll see you in a bit. So I have 3 more books to update you on, and this is going to be the last 3 of this video. I originally was going to make multiple vlogs throughout October, and then I decided to take the entire month off of making YouTube videos and just give myself a little bit of a break. I have still been recording them, obviously, but I just haven't been editing them and putting them out. So this has ended up being just one big ol' video. So if you've made it all the way to the end, I'm so grateful. But I'm so excited. Let's talk about these books. Okay, so I finished Ballad and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It kept up with what Once Upon a Broken Heart set up. It kept up with it. The whimsy was still there. The fun characters, you fall more in love with Jax. I really still loved Evangeline and her character. It was just nice that it wasn't kind of like a second book that just didn't still capture the magic of the first one. That did not happen at all. It maintained it all. It was so good. It was so fun. The ending literally gutted me. I then had to call my mom at midnight and scream at her for not preparing me for the ending of this book. But it is so good. I originally thought that this was going to be a duology, but I had heard kind of like little mumblings on the internet that it was actually going to be more than 2 books. So I'm grateful that I went into reading this with that expectation, because if I had still thought that this was going to be the ending, I would be even more not okay. So I thoroughly enjoyed this. I thought all of it was a lot of fun. I thought the plot moved pretty quickly. There was one point that I guess you could kind of consider it a little bit slower, but I really liked the setting that took place in that part of the book, so it didn't feel slow to me. I actually really enjoyed it. I desperately need book 3 to just come to a conclusion of everything that's going on. I don't know if it's going to be 3 books or more, but I'm excited nonetheless. Okay, so the next one I read was The Final Gambit by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the 3rd book in the Inheritance Legacy series. Now, I loved the first one, The Inheritance Games. It does feel a little bit more on the middle grade YA spectrum, but I really loved the puzzles and the twists and the turns and the games that happen and the mystery and trying to figure it all out. I think that part was absolutely brilliant. I didn't love book 2 as much. And then I liked this one more than book 2, but not quite as much as book 1. I liked the plot of this one, kind of like the whodunit, who's threatening me, trying to figure out all of that stuff. I thought that was pretty cool. I also personally, she didn't end up with a brother that I wanted her to end up with, and it felt like there may have kind of very small been a bit of character assassination on that brother in order to justify the brother that she did end up being with. So it was kind of one of those things where I was a bit bummed with the way that his character was portrayed in this book, but we are getting another book about the brothers. I think this core trilogy part is done, and this is kind of more of a spin-off, and I think it's from the brothers' point of view about a different story that happens after this series takes place. So I do think that's going to be fun. I'm not sure I'm going to jump to read it, because even though I thought this series was fun, I'm kind of happy with the way that it's over for now. But yeah, so it was good. I was happy with the way that it ended, but I was kind of looking for the magic of that first book a little bit. Okay, y'all, so this next one makes me really happy because it was a win. It was such a win. And when I was halfway through this book, I was like, I need the second half of this book to be as good as the first half because I'm having such a good time and I'm going to be so bummed if it doesn't turn out being good. And y'all, it lived up to it for me. I really, really enjoyed it. But this was a recommendation that I got off TikTok like over a year ago from Kat's Books. And it's Down Comes the Night by Allison Sapp. This has been on my TBR for a long time. I'm pretty sure it was on my last year's autumn TBR. And I really, really enjoyed it. I do want to say, first off, that the mystery aspect of this book is super straightforward. So if you're looking for a bit more of a complex mystery, this is not going to be that for you. But it was still good. Like, I still really liked it. I think the aspect of this book that I liked the most can truly be summed up by the dedication page. And it's for all the girls who feel too much. And let me tell you, when I read that, I was like, oh, I hope she takes that concept and weaves it in every part of this book. And y'all, she did. She did. Oh my gosh. I think what I loved about this book so much is that I really connected with the main character, Rin. She is a healer in the military, and basically she feels like her entire purpose is her healing magic, and that if she is not good at that, then she's not good enough for anyone. And she's super compassionate, and everyone around her, including her best friend, tells her that her compassion is a weakness and that it is not a good thing and that she needs to literally eradicate it from herself. And she is kind of dishonorably discharged from the military for an act of compassion that she had on someone. In a moment of desperation, she takes a job from a very eccentric lord from another country to heal one of his servants. And when she arrives, she finds out that it is her country's sworn enemy is actually the sick servant. And so compassion plays a huge part of this book on whether or not it is seen as a strength or a weakness, if love is a weakness, if feeling things and trying to trust your gut and things like that, if it is good or if it is bad. And y'all, let me tell you, I loved it. I loved being in Rin's head and watching her process through everything because it felt very similar to mine. And I thought it was really sweet. So I think it would kind of fall under the category of like the Elaines from ACOTAR or the Elides from Throne of Glass or even the Irene from Throne of Glass. If you kind of connected with those characters in the way that they like had their compassion or their softness seen as a weakness by a lot of other characters in that series, then I think you would really like this book a lot. I think I was reading this book and seeing the portrayal of this characterization was almost kind of healing for me. I love a good, strong, badass, fierce, confident main character, and I love seeing that portrayal in books, but I adored seeing the more soft, tender, compassionate emotional feeling portrayal as well. It felt very refreshing for me. So I just really enjoyed this one. I also really liked the love interest a lot. And it's a standalone, which I think is really, really fun. It kind of made it, you know, easy to just feel like you're not going to be left on a cliffhanger. It was a very satisfying ending. It was just a great way to not have to wait a whole year for the next book to come out. It just ended and it felt good and it didn't feel rushed and it didn't feel too drawn out. I just thought that the pacing was perfect and I just really, really liked this book a lot. So happy to have read this one, and it being one of the last books that I read in October. It was just such a great way to end the month. That is it for this video. I know that it is long and it's a lot of books. So again, thank you for sticking around to the very end. If you have made it this far, I really, really appreciate it. If you would like to learn a little bit more about us, check us out on Instagram at the Bibliovertpodcast. We are always looking to make new friends. So please feel free to slide into our DMs. Let's talk about books. I would absolutely love it. I would also love to hear the books that you've been reading this month. So feel free to drop them in the comments down below. We also have a podcast called the Bibliovertpodcast. We have episodes that come out on Mondays. We do rom-coms, fantasy, author interviews, topic episodes. We just have a great time. It's a blast. You can check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Play. And we also have a Patreon where we have the best time. We have a super fun chat with a bunch of other book-loving readers. We also have exclusive episodes specifically for our patrons. We do a book buddy read every month and a Zoom date to talk about that book, and then a lot of other behind-the-scenes content as well. So we'd love to have you join our family. But that is it for this video. Have a fantastic day, happy reading, and I'll see you next time.